Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Mesa City Council study session for the afternoon of May the 18th. I'm looking at the faces of all of our council who are present on this Zoom version of our council study session. The first item on our agenda for today's meeting is to review the items on the agenda for tonight's regular council meeting and special council meeting. So council, if you could please refer to those two agendas. Is there anyone who has, I think that we have a staff presentation on some of these items, but are there any council that would like to begin with any questions about anything on either agenda? Okay, I'm not seeing any hand. Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. Councilmember Duff.
I'm still learning a lot about the budget, but on 9B, the 5-year capital improvement program, on the resolution, page 3.
Jen, we got you're off mute, but we got stop video. We got
okay.
All right. There you go.
Okay. Well, yeah, I was trying to look at the anyway. I'll try to get that on my computer, but it's on page 3 of the resolution. There was, on the general fund amount, there's a fluctuation, I think it was around 6 million or something, and it was much more than the previous years, and I was just trying to understand how that flow worked.
You know, Mr. Brady, I think you were planning on a staff presentation on the CIP. Is that the agenda item 9A? And we were
so we can if you don't
we can do that now during the study session and or during the public hearing, but I think we're going to have some time during the study session. Maybe we ought to just go ahead and have that staff presentation now, and we can address Councilmember Duff's question in the process of that.
Thank you, Mayor. I think Mr. Butler should make that presentation, and then when he concludes his presentation, I'll have him address what we see, what projects are showing up in that 24-25. That's just a scheduling of CIP projects, so he can describe what projects are scheduled in the general fund. They're most likely projects that have been recently approved in a bond program. But let's go through the whole presentation. It's just a short presentation, and then I'll let Mr. Butler answer that that question, if that's okay, Mayor.
Please.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here just to provide a brief overview of the CIP that's on the agenda for this evening. This first slide just highlights that the majority of the CIP is bond financed or debt financed. The programs on the left side of the screen, including parks, public safety, and transportation, the debt service is secured with the property tax, and then the programs on the right side are the utility programs, and the debt service for those programs are covered with utility revenues. In terms of the overall 5-year program, this is a percentage breakdown of how the funding works out. You can see that there is a number of projects in the utility bond program for the year that the first year of the program, 2021, including some upgrades at the various plants, both on the water and wastewater program. And then you see looking at the 5-year program, as several of those plant upgrades are completed and the greenfield expansion is also completed, that the majority of funding shifts over to the general obligation side, reflecting the 2018 bond program. And we provided an update to council about a month ago outlining some of those projects that will be delayed under the current circumstances. And I'll review those a little bit more going forward. In terms of the dollars, this is just a comparison between the current fiscal year and what are included in the program for next year. The majority of this is tied to, the majority of the difference is tied to the completion of the greenfield expansion. You can see the budget for the joint venture program in particular reflects that project is nearing completion. And then, as I mentioned, with several of the projects from the 2018 election going forward, both in 2021 and then going forward, the funding shifts towards the general obligation side. I should note that this is net of carryover, so there are projects that are underway currently, and we carry over the funds to the next year. And so this just reflects projects as they were previously scheduled. Wanted to highlight just a couple of projects that have been completed in relation to the 2012 bond program. These are photos from both Eagles Park and then Signal Butte Park. These are significant completions, and they'll be great assets for the community going forward. The next several slides highlight some of the current projects that are underway. This first slide includes parks and public safety. You'll note that Fire Station 221, which is currently underway, improvements at the public safety facility related to the burn building that has been in the works for several years, is finally coming to where we're going to be able to complete that project, as well as various other improvements. Some of these programs were part of the proposed deferment that I'll talk about later. In terms of transportation, many of these projects council is familiar with major construction going on in the downtown area with Mesa Drive Phase 2, as well as First Avenue. If we noted every transportation project, there would just be too much print on here, but these are the kinds of things that are ongoing today. The next few slides, again, just to serve as a reminder for the projects that we discussed with council in relation to the 2018 bond program. These projects continue on schedule as planned, including the plaza at Mesa City Center, communication fiber, which supports our public safety communication network, and then the ongoing activities related to Fire Station 221. For the projects on this slide, we're going to continue with land acquisition and design only, pending the review of the economic situation related to COVID-19. So library improvements, Monterey Park, North Center Street, and Red Mountain Park. So design and land acquisition will continue to be worked on, tied to these projects. And then engineering has the schedule as far as when those activities will conclude, and then we'll evaluate those with council as far as when to proceed with construction activities. One project that we did want to note as far as deferment is the fire apparatus replacement. You'll recall that the 2018 bond program included monies for fire apparatus replacement. This is not new replacement tied to, or new apparatus tied to new station construction, for example, 221. But this is just the normal replacement schedule for existing apparatus. We have an order that's currently being filled, and that's going to continue. And then working with Mesa Fire and Medical, they are revising the schedule in order to delay some of those additional purchases going forward. Still being able to provide community service in terms of providing safety for the community, but a revised schedule to make sure that those are timely in their replacement. This is just to remind council of the dollars that we identified for potential deferment. In the current year, it's 6.1 million, and then what we're proposing for 2021 is 7.5 million. These dollars will be highlighted in June. Candace mentioned the opportunity to come back to council to discuss more of a finalized list of possible deferments, and these monies will be included in that discussion for council. Just wanted to take a moment as far as utility projects. Given the number of projects, it makes sense for us to highlight those, but I do remind you that the individual project summary was included in your attachments for tonight's agenda item. You can see that there's some substantial funding tied to plant improvements, including the Northwest Water Reclamation Plant, and then also tied to some street improvements. There's significant dollars for replacing the utility lines while we're working on the street as well. This is just some additional projects that include both some projects for Mesa improvements and then some of our co-owned facilities such as the Val Vista Water Treatment Plant and 91st Avenue, where we commit capital dollars in order to support the improvements at those two facilities. Did want to note, if you'll recall, Council, in the spring, we had started discussions with Council regarding the transportation program in regards to specifically a potential street bond program. Given the current economic situation, as well as trying to understand what the impacts will be to growth and development in the community, what we're proposing is that we bring these capital programs back to council, likely in February of next year. What that will do is it will allow us to follow the schedule that we have today, which we follow. Normally, staff works on updating these programs and updating the cost of these programs and project estimates in the fall, and then in the spring, consistent with what we've done, come back in the spring to council to provide an update and seek direction. Typically, that takes place over several meetings where we provide updates and allow council to consider the various projects that make up these programs. So that's the extent of the update that I have for tonight.
So Scott, can you answer the Councilmember Duff's question on resolutions under the operation and maintenance? Is that year out into the future, why that's going up? I'm assuming there's large facilities that are coming online during that time.
So Councilmember Duff, if you'll recall, we left the 2018 bond projects as scheduled in the previous CIP, and that general fund dollars is tied to the public safety facilities coming online. I believe it's the Northeast Public Safety Facility, which involves both police and fire. But it may be the library facility, but those will be delayed based on a revised schedule. But that's what that money is tied to. And actually, as I look at it now, I believe it is the library facility because that's a new facility in Southeast Mesa, and there's significant dollars to have that facility
So
open.
Mayor, Councilmember Duff, what we do is when we create the schedule for the capital projects when they come online, anticipating when they would come online, we also build into our forecast on the operating side the cost to staff those facilities up, whether it's a new fire station, a police station, or in this case, it may be both. Well, we know it's most likely the new library out in Southeast Mesa, and it may include also part of a fire station. But that's why that number is so large, because it's bringing on an entire new library at that time.
So is it due to the deferment that it's loaded so heavily in the fiscal year 24-25, or is that planned to have the impact on the general fund?
No, right now it's anticipated. That's the schedule for when it would be completed and open sometime during that fiscal year. And so with that, anticipating that happen, because remember our CIP was about a 5-year program, five and a half year program, I think. And so that was one of the projects that was kind of at the end of the schedule. So anticipating that it would come open at some point during that year, we have to anticipate the operational costs, the staffing that will be needed to support that facility when we open it up.
And if I may, Mayor and Councilmember Duff, just an additional comment. We do include these estimates in the forecast that OMB does. And so in terms of the way that Brian, Richel, and Candace look at the long-term forecast, these dollars are included in that outlook. One additional...
I apologize. What line item are we referring to right now?
So I think the reference was to the resolution, page 3.
Yeah,
On the-
page 3.
And then if you go down to general fund, right?
Yeah,
And go all the way
On-
to 24, 25.
for the one-time startup as well as the ongoing for the general fund impact for that year.
Now, Mayor and Councilmember Duff, in the ongoing section, those numbers are cumulative, so that we can build those into the forecast. And so that's not to suggest that so if you look at 24, 25, fiscal year 24, 25, that doesn't mean that in that 1 year, we are adding $6.5 million. What it means is that as a result of the projects that are included in the 5-year program, that by year 5, that's how much we will spend in total for these projects.
On the operations side,
Correct.
for all new projects?
For all new.
So it could include more than the library.
Correct.
But that, most likely, a significant portion is going to be the library.
The majority of that funding is tied to the library and the 2 public safety facilities.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mayor and Council, can I just make sure, I hope that you caught the comment that Scott made in the presentation. Beginning of this year, we started having, well, even before the beginning of this year, we started having a conversation about a future transportation bond. And really, we were ramping up. We had done the Move Mesa survey and outreach, but with the change in, obviously, our adjustments most recently, we've just not been able to do the outreach and continue the process to vet through those projects. We've been pulled in a lot of different directions. So our recommendation at this time is not to pursue a transportation bond for this fall, which would require council to make a decision on calling an election June 15th, that we just defer that for at least another year and come back and have that discussion in the future.
You know, the only question I would have, Chris, is a while back, we got a presentation on Prop 400 and, how we leverage city dollars for matching Prop 400 dollars. And I think we're all anxious to see, to take full advantage of that. Would the lack of a street bond cripple our ability to participate in Prop 400 activities?
Mayor, it's a great question. I think the region's also having lots of discussions about whether or not the timing when they're going to pursue that extension. I don't know if Mr. Butler is somewhere out there on a phone, but I know there's a lot of concern, possibly, about, with the timing of that. It may be further out into the future. I think if we would be better suited to accelerate projects if we had an authorization in place. But I don't think 1 year for inside of a 20-year plan is going to make a significant difference. I think the key is we will need our match in order to have projects accomplished. I just think the difficulty of going to voters and making the case for even a minor or an adjustment in the property tax levy would be difficult in such a short period of time. So that's kind of where we landed.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I'm just thinking that through the current Prop 400 authorization, which still lasts for a couple more years, we wouldn't then be crippled and not be able to complete some of the projects that we were hoping to complete under the existing Prop 400.
I see what you're saying. Mayor, we'll have to take a look at that. It'll be interesting to see because I think we're not the only city that would be seeing that as a difficulty this year. In the last 2 years to come up with that match. So I think that's a conversation the whole region's going to have. Mr. Butler's done a good job of budgeting and leveraging some of our street transportation bonds to help provide for that match. So for at least the next, what do you think, Scott? You looked at the schedule. What do you think for the next year? We have, yeah.
Comfortably for the next year.
So I think he's identified those matching dollars for the next year, Mayor, so at least the projects that have been identified over the next year, street projects, the regional street projects, that we will be able to come up with a match for those.
Okay, thank you.
I got a question on that.
Yes, Jeremy, and then Kevin.
If we wait to do the bond authorizations until next year is not an election year, does that mean we're going to incur the cost to run a special election if we try to push for bonds in an off year?
Mayor, Councilmember Whitaker, that's correct. We would incur the cost for that election.
And what would that cost be?
I'm just estimating approximately $600,000.
Okay.
Yeah, I seriously doubt that we would call a special election just to propose a street bond. I guess that seems like a pretty, well, that seems like an unlikely scenario. Mr. Brady, was that what you were suggesting?
Well, it's either delay it a year or 2 years. I mean, I think we have that option. I think it challenges us because we do have challenges in Southeast Mesa and other parts of the city with traffic issues. Listen, this is just an observation. We know of other cities that are planning on doing transportation bonds, and they have backed off of them. If the council wants to pursue that, we had a list of projects. We could bring those forward and put them on the agenda in June. It'd be a lot less costly for the city to be part of the election in June. I think it's just, how would that be received? And if council's comfortable with that, I would lean more to your judgment on that. It would be, I think we estimated between about, on the average homeowner, $25 a year impact for the total we were looking at. So we could bring that forward, have a discussion about that, and put that on the ballot. We were just concerned that because other communities have backed off, and just the concern about the fiscal impact on homeowners, we were reluctant to suggest moving that forward.
Personally, I don't have an appetite for pursuing a street bond this election cycle. The only thing that I think would persuade me to think otherwise would be if waiting and participating in the next regular election would, as I indicated earlier, somehow prevent us from participating in Prop 400 projects and leveraging regional dollars. So if staff could get an answer to that question, I think that will answer, for me personally, that would answer where I'm at on that issue. I'm sorry, Kevin, you had a question.
Yeah, one's a comment. Yeah, we are in need of, we do have transportation woes out in Southeast Mesa. You know, as you know, we kind of develop as we develop. And so, so some of our roads out here are you know, especially like Signal Butte and some of the others, Ellsworth, are just a mess and need to be cleaned up. And I know we need to, at some point, connect Pecos to Pecos and Ray Road to Ray Road. To eliminate some of those offsets. Chris, is there any reason why we couldn't go, just because we're bonding or we have a bond election, doesn't mean that the homeowners are hit with that secondary property tax, correct? It's only when we issue the bond debt. So if we went out this year and did the bond election and didn't really touch the bonds until the following year, it wouldn't really hit any of our residents' pocketbook this fiscal year, correct?
Yeah, Mayor Councilman Thompson, you're correct. And however, I think from a political standpoint, you need to know is when we go through the process of, and I'm going to let Mr. Smith speak to this, but the way the ballot reads and the way the language reads, it'll speak to that $25. So most voters, when they vote, they won't know about that nuance that we won't actually raise the levy until after we sell the bonds and how that works. The disclosure in the language for most voters would almost suggest that $25 is authorizing the $25. So it's hard to spend time trying to make that argument. Well, don't worry about it. It's not going to apply this year. It's going to be later. The way the language is written, most people will come away with the impression that it's not only imminent, but it's almost immediate, I think. at least when I've read that language that's required, it's difficult to make your point, which your point is absolutely right, but it's the way the disclosure is on the ballot. It always seemed to me the impression was given to the voters that that was going to happen sooner than later.
Yeah, but we've never had issues with things like park bonds, transportation bonds, utility bonds, correct? I mean, those have always passed overwhelmingly. It's only when we try to pair something up, you know, like a sports complex with public sales tax that things kind of get messed up. But for the most part, they've always, bonds have always passed with overwhelming support from our community with, you know, 60, 70% approval rating, correct?
Certainly on the utilities and transportation and public safety, transportation, utilities, that is the case. That is our history. And if the council would like, we could bring that list of projects back to you on Thursday. We could review it, and we could then maybe have this discussion, and council could give us direction about whether you want to pursue, what's it called, calling the election. I'm not sure what the right term is. Yeah.
Right. I like the idea. I would like to at least explore that idea versus just saying no right now. You know, at least look at it, explore it, and take a look and see what that means for the citizens and for the city itself. My original question, going back to, and looking at the resolution reminded me to ask. The public safety sales tax, have all the lawsuits been settled on that, the taxation piece? Because I know that there for a while, everything was kind of in limbo, waiting on the judges or whoever to settle, whether we could introduce, cities could introduce new taxes or so forth.
Mayor, Councilmember Thompson, I think I know the litigation you're referring to, and it has been resolved so far. Phoenix did win at least the lawsuit that was to date the only lawsuit regarding services and the legislation you're talking about.
Okay, so we're good to spend down our public safety sales tax with no regrets then?
I think what we're saying is that the dollars, with the exception of the impact of the current economy, with the assumption we included in those estimates included, all of that is contained within the estimates. Now, we just have to deal with the impact of the closing down of businesses, and we'll have to review that over the next couple of months. But yes, you're correct. As far as all the elements that are included in there, yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Luna.
Mayor, my comment was, I don't think voters have the appetite for a bond right now. My preference is that we delay for another year. You know, the city now has to then pivot to go and try to market this bond process. My preference is that they focus on dealing with the issues related to COVID and dealing with the economy and in lieu of trying to work towards trying to put a bond out for the community. So that would be my preference.
Yeah, and I think I'm firmly on both your side and Mr. Thompson's side here, because I think what I'm saying is I agree that the sentiment of the voters is very conservative right now, particularly given the uncertain financial situation that we're in. But I think it would be good to see really what we're talking about. I mean, are some of these street projects that we anticipate starting sooner than later in particularly the southeast part of Mesa, where we have dramatic needs, are we talking about putting those on the shelf, or specifically what projects could proceed absent a new street bond and what couldn't? I'm curious to see that list as well. Yes, Jeremy.
So when I looked at if I recall from last year's CIP, our plan was to issue, don't quote me on the number, something like I thought $600 million in new bonds on this election cycle. So has the need for the $600 in capital just completely dissipated due to COVID, or is it that we still need the money, we just don't want to put it on the ballot because we don't believe the voters have an appetite to approve the money that we need to keep the city functioning?
Well, I have an answer to that. I don't think it was ever 600 million. I think staff said that we could do up to they identified there's up to 600 million in projects out there. I don't think it was ever anyone's intention of actually going to the voters and asking for that.
All right, that was more of a question. That wasn't a statement. I thought it was, I thought when I looked at the CIP projections last year, it was something like 600 million. I may be completely off. It was more of a question for somebody who has the answer on
We
staff.
would have to go back and check. I don't know that we would know where that number is. So 600 million would have to be a huge, I mean, that's not just authorization. If you're suggesting authorization comes from elections. The sale of bonds comes each year. Selling $600 million in 1 year would be beyond anything we've ever done. Seeking authorization for 600 million or so between transportation and utilities, that is I could see that number possibly, but let us clarify this next week. Or this Thursday with a transportation review of where we were, what the projects were on that list. Because we did have a presentation to council, and I think it was just a matter of kind of finalizing that list of projects and the amount. And I think we were kind of in between a couple of numbers and the impact that would have on the tax levy. So we can bring that back quickly and just talk about that. We are nearing, what we'll also talk about what's still available under the transportation bonds. We've moved forward with several transportation projects to do the design work. So we would have that in place if dollars became available. And we can identify which ones, Mayor, would be eligible under the current Prop 400 and where, how much available funds we have to meet those matching dollars that we require to help those projects move along. So we can address all those on Thursday.
So I guess, if I could, are we tabling the CIP approval for tonight and moving that out until a future council meeting?
No.
Or?
No. That remains on the agenda. I think Mr. Brady's going to come back answering the question that we just asked on Thursday. Mr. Freeman.
Yeah, just a question and with what we're discussing. What's the timeline for the city clerk for putting this on for ballot?
Councilmember or Vice Mayor Freeman, for this November?
Yes.
You would have to call the election and put that on the ballot by June 15th.
So any language written for a proposed transportation bond would have to be prepared and ready to go by June 15th?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Council, any other questions on this staff presentation on agenda item 9A for tonight's meeting?
All right. I got a couple more questions, John.
Jeremy.
I know that staff had indicated that there are some land sales that we're using to pay down some of our debt obligations. Do we have a list of that or what that looks like?
Mayor and Council, I think we've discussed those. The land sale, the proceeds we derive from the Pinal County sale is certainly one of those. I can't name all, that's the largest ones I can think of, so.
Okay, I was just trying to clarify the land sales and the CIP stuff. The other thing was the capital improvement project CP0213, which was the federal building renovation. And that, I don't recall, did we have a council meeting describing what we're doing with the federal building? I vaguely remember one from a few years ago, but I don't recall anything recent unless my...
So, Mayor and Council, that is a project that was previously approved in a past park bond project in I can't remember, 2012. So that project's been sitting there. We are moving forward on schematic or conceptual designs right now. And so we have an architect and they're doing some just general, what would it take to open the building up? We haven't made any decisions on programming. But that's a project we've been working on for almost 8 years now.
Okay, I mean, it was just vague in the CIP, so I wasn't sure what, I mean, do we know what it is? It's gonna be like a library or something? Or do we
No,
have any
well,
idea?
I think that's the question that we want to come back to council with. Right now, our challenge is just getting that building, the funding we have really only allows us to get that building to a point where it can be occupied, where any just general use could take place, not designed for any specific use. And so the idea is to kind of get it to that point, and then we could have discussions. There's interest from indoor play areas, museums. There's a variety of different discussions that have taken place in the community. So I think that's going to have to be a future decision and financial commitment. Right now, we're just taking the few dollars we have just to try to make it so that we could have any kind of activity, a variety of activities could take place in a kind of more open systems kind of facility. It's a great facility, but it just does not have the ADA, the HVAC. It doesn't, you couldn't go in there, public could not go in there today and have any kind of event. And so we're just trying to work on that simple concept. And then I think after that, there would be probably a good conversation about other programming that might want to take place as the city manages that building.
Okay, that's all I have on the CIP stuff.
Okay, thank you. Council, any other questions regarding anything on the agenda for tonight's regular council meeting or the special council meeting?
I have more questions on the special council meeting, if I may.
Sure.
When we talk about the budget, one of the things that I was looking for clarification on, and I don't recall if it came out in last Thursday's study session, but what was the I can't remember the tax that we referred to our utilities, the payments in lieu of, or I don't remember the exact terminology, but how much of that is coming out of the utilities for this upcoming fiscal year?
Mayor and Councilmember Whitaker, that is the payment in lieu of franchise fees is what you're referring to. And that
Yes.
is roughly about $12 million in the 2021 fiscal year budget.
I apologize. How much, Candace?
That's roughly about $12 million.
And that's the payment in lieu for all of the utilities.
Correct. That'd be all of those.
So to clarify then, the transfer from the enterprise fund to the general fund is $108 million. So with the payment in lieu, the total amount of money coming out of the utilities is roughly $120 million this year, or is that $12 million already calculated into that $108 million general fund transfer?
Mayor and Councilmember Whitaker, it's not included in the transfer. So there's a transfer to the general fund, and then there's the payment in lieu, which is an expense to the utilities. And so it's in the expense line of the utilities, which would come in. The other change, if you recall from the ordinance approved by council, was that the non-utility enterprise funds, enterprise programs, are no longer in the enterprise fund. Those have been moved to the general fund. So it is a savings to the enterprise fund in total of about $6.2 million.
I'm not following you, Candace. It's a savings to the utility fund of $6.2 million because of what?
It's a separate, so the convention center and the spring training programs used to be in the utility fund, in the enterprise fund, and they are no longer in. It's now a utility fund, and those have been moved over to a separate fund and subsidized by the general fund. So that results in a savings to the enterprise fund of about $6.2 million.
I gotcha. So because those were all together in the past, the transfer out of the enterprise fund wasn't apparent, but it's a net negative $602 million coming out of what is defined as the new utility fund, just to be able to support those programs, if I'm following you.
I'm sorry, no. The $6.2 million was covered by the enterprise fund this year in fiscal year 1920, and it is no longer covered by the enterprise fund in 2021. So that means there's a savings to the enterprise fund of about $6.2 million that is no longer covering the convention center, and amphitheater, and the spring training programs. Those are now being covered by the general fund.
Okay, so if I follow what you're saying, the utility fund is saving $6.2 million because we no longer are supporting the convention center or the stadiums from the utility fund. However, the total amount transferred out of the utility fund is 108 million plus the 12 million in payment in lieu.
That is correct. I'd have to look at the 108 because that's changed. That actually went down a little bit. The 108 million was from this fiscal year. There was a change because now it's based on the percentage. So it's 30% of the gross revenues, which was actually a little bit less than what would have been anticipated under the old method.
Okay. Okay. I think I'm following what you're saying. I think that's the extent of the questions.
Okay, thank you. Council, any other questions regarding the two meetings we're holding later tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll proceed with the next item on our agenda for this meeting. Item 2 is to hear a presentation and discuss a proposed utility assistance program to be administered by Mesa CAN to be funded by CARES stimulus funding. Mr. Brady.
Yes, Mayor and Council, we'll make this brief, but we do have Ed Quedens here who heads up this utility assistance program on the city side. We also have Mr. Mike Hughes here again from New Leaf, but specifically for the program of Mesa CAN, which administers our utility assistance program today. And we just wanted to talk about going forward with Mesa CARES dollars, how we'd like to work to supplement that program. So I'm going to let Ed and Mike give that presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So we're here this afternoon to propose this utility assistance program under our Mesa CARES program to provide utility assistance to Mesa residents who are affected by COVID. We're recommending that we partner again with Mesa CAN, providing them with $1 million in additional funds to expand our existing Mesa utility assistance program to meet the increased community need. As a reminder, our existing program is $125,000 per fiscal year administered by Mesa CAN for Mesa residents for their Mesa utilities. We don't cover under this program Southwest Gas and SRP, it's only Mesa utilities. We use Mesa CAN's application, evaluation, and award criteria. Under the existing assistance program, individuals apply for assistance through Mesa CAN. Mesa CAN sends the city the customer utility account information, and we actually apply that guarantee to the account. No check, no cash is exchanged with the customer. We just apply it to the account based on what Mesa CAN has awarded. As we move into Mesa CARES program, we need to make some adjustments to that criteria to comply with the CARES Act requirements. So the assistance has to be for COVID-related financial hardship requirements. We are opening it, of course, to Mesa residents for their Mesa, SRP, and Southwest Gas utility needs. Again, as in the existing program, the funding, the assistance for Mesa utilities will be transferred to us. The amount awarded will be transferred to us, and we will apply that to the customer account. So again, no funds will be exchanged between the city, Mesa CAN, or the customer. And we will also do that for Southwest Gas and SRP. Mesa CAN does this already. This should work again in much similar fashion to what we do today, but it's also an existing methodology that Mesa CAN has in place. One of the nice things about partnering with Mesa CAN is that they have other assistance programs available to that customer. So for pre-COVID needs, they have their normal utility assistance programs and other assistance programs. They can also tap into the Mesa Utility Assistance Program, the $125,000 that we provide each fiscal year. Mesa CAN did get some COVID-related funding for utility assistance through DES that they can tap into. Again, one of the nice things about Mesa CAN is they can wrap other programs into the things that they can provide a client when they walk in the door. We have partnered with Mesa CAN for our low-income senior program that's on tonight's agenda for introduction. This is a discount on the water service charge. They can also, Mesa CAN is administering this program based on the criteria, but they also have other wraparound services. So if a customer has other needs, the case manager is right there to be able to wrap those around and provide that assistance. Sorry. Okay, there we go. And then one other assistance program of note that I threw in here, the Mesa Summer Energy Assistance Program from Energy Resources. This is a discount on the electric service charge for the months of June, July, and August. And we do accept those applications in Energy Resources, and we apply those to the customer's electric account for those 3 months. So our next steps, if council is good with the direction we're heading, we'll finalize the program with Mesa CAN. Significant issues are the resource needs and the ramp up. We do need to bring on some additional case managers rather, work on the location and the hours. And then we will also work on our outreach efforts. We plan to look at our utility accounts that are delinquent because we know that those folks are probably also delinquent with SRP and Southwest Gas, and we'll reach out to them to make sure they know the program's out there and available and how to contact Mesa CAN to get an appointment. And with that, we're available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Thompson.
Not really a question, but rather just a statement. I love this idea. I love pushing the funding to Mesa CAN. They are probably one of the most responsive organizations that I've seen in quite some time. Whenever I've had constituents, either my own or even from other districts, have reached out that follow me on social media, needing help. I've sent them over to Eva over at Mesa CAN, and she has taken them and given them all the services that they potentially could get. We have a person in District 6 right now that's having some issues, is unemployed and is having issues with rent and utilities and even trying to put food on their table. And so I'm sending him to every possible organization in Mesa that can offer the help. And Eva, by far, over at Mesa CAN has been head and shoulders. So I love the idea. I think we're going to see more and more of our citizens that are going to need assistance, especially as businesses or some of those small businesses that aren't able to come back up and open their doors, or even some of those folks that were furloughed or laid off. I think it's a phenomenal program, and I support this 100%.
Thank you very much. I know other council members have comments as well. We'll go with Mr. Heredia, followed by Mr. Luna. Frankie, we're not hearing you.
Hello?
Yes, you're on.
Just wondering, as far as timeline, what are we thinking of this expansion of the program? I love the idea of expanding this program and also along with timeline, the eligibility process. Are we expanding the folks that can qualify for this? Because normally it's been a certain percentage of, I think, income based, or I might be wrong, but just looking at, wanted to see if we, more folks based on what's happened last couple months might be qualifying for this type of relief. So those are my 2 points there.
So Mayor, Councilmember To the first question, one of the things that's significant that we have to ramp up is the staffing at Mesa CAN. So they need to bring on some case managers and get them trained. We're probably looking into the first couple weeks of June, considering it's already the middle of May. This program is kind of playing catch up. Utility assistance wasn't really clarified in the CARES Act in the FAQs from the Treasury until May 4th. So we're kind of playing catch up here, but the most significant issue is the ramp up of those case managers. And then one of the nice things that Mesa CAN has been able to do too, the case managers really have the ability to, what we've seen is they delve into all the resources that are available to them. So one of the things that Eva has told me is we're looking at a 30-day look back on income at this point, which really helps those who are in need due to the COVID issues. Get everything?
And to my, just one other question, maybe to Mr. Brady, is 1 million enough, you think, as far as maybe demand for this type of relief?
Yeah, that's a great question, Councilor Reddy, and I don't know the answer to that. We would start with that amount, and I think the goal here for us with this program is to provide assistance to those in need, and really we've kind of anticipated that we would do this through the summer, and hopefully that this would allow us to make it through most of the summer months through middle of September. Because again, what we're trying to do is assist people so that again, they don't have their power shut off or their water shut off at some point in the future. So that's our goal. We can evaluate as we go along what the burn rate is on this so we'll be referring individuals to this program as we see the need. If after the first month or so, it looks like it's growing faster than we anticipated, we may return to council and have to maybe allocate some dollars out of some other programs to cover this difference. But we picked a number. It's a lot more than we've ever put into this program before, and we'll report back to council and let you know how that's working. But it's I don't know the answer. It was just it seemed like a lot of money that would be available, and we hope that it's enough.
Thank you, Frankie. Mr. Luna.
Thank you. First of all, I think one of the great things about this is that Mesa CAN has their infrastructure in place. They've done this for many, many years. Eva over at Mesa CAN does a tremendous job under the tutelage of Mike Hughes. So thank you, Mike, for taking on this project. I also appreciate the city working with our nonprofits to get this work done. They're a great group of people that know how to work with these individuals. And what's most important is that Mesa CAN, as well as a New Leaf, can opt for wraparound services if any of these individuals find themselves in crisis. Obviously, they're in crisis because they're unable to pay their utility bills. So this is a great working partnership. And also, I'd like to make sure that we get the word out, Mr. Brady, as fast as we can to let the community know that there's special assistance is available as we come into our summer months, because we certainly don't want any individuals suffering during the hot summer. And so thank you so much, and we'll keep us updated in terms of the funding, and hopefully if that's not enough funds, that we can secure additional funds to support our residents.
Sure, and Mayor and Council, let me clarify. What we anticipate doing with this program is not necessarily doing a broad advertisement of this program. Literally, we're going into our accounts receivable report that Ed gets regularly and identifying those individuals who are falling behind. And then we're going to be proactive in reaching out to them and multiple times to encourage them to take advantage of this program. So that's our goal. We frankly worry that if we just advertise this, the million would not even be close to enough. And so what we're really doing is trying to identify those who are truly under hardship because they've lacked making payment. And it appears that under any other circumstances, though, the utilities would be shut off, either by us or SRP. Since that's not happening right now, we feel like this is the best time to help them and identify them, and we will reach out to them and refer them into the program, just like we do today.
Thank you.
Great idea. Thank you, Chris. No, I appreciate that. So you'll alert them that their utility payment or lack of payment will trigger your response, and then you'll reach out to these individuals and let them know that this is available to them.
That is correct. Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Duff and then Vice Mayor Freeman.
Well, I'm glad that you're reaching out because the capacity of, right now, Mesa County just have the hours, a few hours you can call in, and the funnel is way too small for the need, and that's at 100,000. So I'm glad we need to make sure we have the capacity to reach out and get these people, reach these people on their needs for the utilities. So are you looking back since COVID? I mean, what is your look back time on is it just current delinquency? Let's say someone was delinquent in January or February before the shutdowns. I mean, what is the delinquency period look like? Is it just recent?
Well,
or how does that work?
So Mayor and Councilmember Duff, the funding that we received, the 90 million that we received and the million that's available from CARES has to apply to something that's happened since March 1st. And so that's as far back as we can go. Now, maybe Mr. Hughes, Mesa CAN may have other opportunities to look further back than that. As far as the $1 million, though, we can only look forward from March 1st.
So the 125,000 that we have budgeted, that will apply over and beyond the million before COVID hit?
No, that's already budgeted in the budget you're approving tonight. The 125, that's in your budget tonight that you're approving. So that'll be in addition to. So I guess we could use that. I don't know how that works.
Mayor, council members, again, the nice thing about partnering with Mesa CAN is they do have different buckets of money available. So while a customer may come in and they have pre-March 1st needs, Mesa CAN does have other programs and funding available to address that need. So they'll take care of that customer to the best they can with all the different tools that they have available.
If a resident has concerns or questions about this program or hadn't been contacted and feel that they qualify, would they call Mesa CARES or Mesa CAN during their 2-hour window that they open up for assistance?
If they have questions, I would suggest they call the Mesa CARES phone line that we have established.
And we're going to try to open up that window. Also, I know you hear that a lot, but we talked to Mr. Hughes, and we're going to expand that for now. Again, remember, these are individuals that we refer to Mesa CAN, and that's how it has been. We identify individuals that are getting our customer service representatives that work for Mr. Quedens. This is how we help them pay their bills. When we identify that they are falling behind and it becomes obvious that they are not able to work out a plan with us, we refer them to Mesa CAN. We always have. And recognizing now that there may be more individuals that we'll be referring to and the need may be greater, we're just increasing that support amount. So how we refer people and process them into the system doesn't really change, although we recognize we may have more individuals, maybe to your point, Councilmember Duff, that we may be referring. And so we have talked to Mesa CAN about even us temporarily funding additional resources to broaden that portal to allow people to get into it easier. And we're going to be watching that and measuring that with Mr. Hughes just to make sure we don't have people get frustrated about being able to get the appointment and get their payment. But again, as long as they're working with Mesa CAN and trying to work through the process, we're not going to shut them off.
Okay. Well, I'm really glad that we're looking at expanding our capacity in Mesa CAN as far as people being able to call in. There's complaints about being able to call in the magic hours and not being able to get through. And especially at this time of need, whatever we can do to have staff available to help, because there are so many people that need the assistance. But I'm in support of this program. I think it's tremendous. And thank you for your work on this.
Thank you. Mr. Freeman.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ed, for your presentation. I was just wondering, is Mr. Hughes next to you? I'd like to hear from him, his perspective on this program.
Vice Mayor Freeman, are you trying to be nice to make sure that I came and it was worth my while?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay.
But I'm very supportive of this program and making sure that you have the capacity and also the funding that you need to administer the program. You're about to take a huge step with your organization.
Well, candidly speaking, we're excited to do that. We've been doing this for 14 years. To Councilmember Duff's point, yes, it's been tough when there's limited dollars, but with these increased dollars, we will expand the staffing, we will expand the hours, we will do everything we can to support these people that need this help and make it as painless an experience as possible. So yes, we feel not only willing, but we are able and capable, and we will come through 100% in making sure that this works.
Thank you, sir, for all you do.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Council. Any other questions or comments on this agenda item? Mr. Brady, Mr. Smith, I notice this is not agendized as an action item. Can you proceed forward without a formal?
I think so, Mayor. As long as we have concurrence of council, it sounds like we're heading in the right direction. So we'll move forward with Mesa CAN and stand this project up.
Okay, I think it's fair to say that the consensus of the council is to authorize this, the recommendations. Thank you very much. I'm seeing the council agree with me. All right. Thank you. The next item on our agenda for this meeting is item 3, to acknowledge receipt of committee minutes. We need to do, is there a motion to that effect? Thank you, Mr. Luna, and a second by Mr. Thompson. Thank you. We need to do a roll call vote. Vice Mayor Freeman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Whitaker. That was an aye, right?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Councilmember Heredia?
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Duff?
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Luna?
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Thompson?
Aye.
Thank you. And I vote aye. That's a unanimous vote. Item 4 on our agenda is current event summary and reports on meetings and conferences attended. Council, I know we just met on Thursday, but is there anything you'd like to add to update us on what you've been up to, Mr. Thompson?
Yeah, I just want to point out, we all got the notification just a bit ago from Chief Hayes that a couple of our firefighters are headed north to Cave Creek to help with the fire up there. I just want to wish them the best of luck, because I know that their help is going to be very welcomed up there.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Council, anything else you'd like to? Yes, Councilmember Duff.
Of course, I have to say something. Last Friday, I attended an island Zoom party with Mesa United Way hosted. It was lots of fun, and the proceeds benefited Foster 360. So I'm so glad that we're able to continue to do some fundraising, even though it is online. And actually, there's some things about it that are, I think, almost more fun than doing the in-person fundraisers. Also, this Wednesday, there's a canned food drive at Mesa Convention Center from 7 a.m. till noon. I'll be out there volunteering. And so please, everybody, come and contribute some cans for those who are in need. Appreciate your help on that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll see you there. Council, anything else you'd like to share with us? All right, the next agenda item then is scheduling of future meetings. Mr. Brady, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Freeman, did you have something? Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Brady.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just again, reminder, we'll see you on Thursday morning. Sounds like we have a few items to cover. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then that concludes the agenda for this meeting. Council, if you'd please unmute your microphones. Is there a motion to adjourn this meeting? Thank you, Mr. Luna. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? All right, this meeting is adjourned. We'll now